guys, Matt here. So today's review is going to be a tabletop review. This is going to be of the Cielo Keychain Pill Holders. So I got one of these several years ago. I'll have to look back to see exactly. So the one I have is the stainless steel nitro bottle keychain pill holder, wide single chamber pill holder. It is that one right there. Like I said, this one I've had for a number of years. You can look back through my other videos and I did a review of this one. It's been fantastic. It's been on my keychain every day since. No issues, no problems. I figured eventually I would have to replace the gasket on it. I have not, and it's not been an issue at all. So this review is gonna focus on the others, but I just wanted to show you this one real quick. I'm gonna have comparison tablets here. You never know what everybody else takes. So some standard size things I got is Tums, ibuprofen, and Tylenol. That way you can size compare to whatever you have. I don't think these will fit in there if I remember correctly. Yeah, so standard size Tums do not fit in there. I'm sure some of the smaller ones will. I have 6 Tylenol here and 6 ibuprofen, and you can see they fit in there with plenty of room to spare. And this isn't that big of a pill holder. It's relatively small. Another one I like is this one with extension. This is really the same size. Actually, it is the same size, that one there, but it has extensions you can see, and you can add those together like this tube right here, 2 compartments, add it on to that one to make it much bigger. So you can definitely kind of customize this. If you've ever needed medication while you're away from home, only to realize you forgot it, you know, maybe it's aspirin, nitro, Benadryl, a daily prescription, whatever it is, something that you rarely use even. This one will hold a full bottle of nitro, by the way. Maybe it's something you never need, but if you do need it, you need it immediately. Well, you'll have it with these. That's exactly where these products like this come in. You know, we're gonna take a detailed look at 4 different keychain pill holders, really 5, including the one that I had prior. If you want to know more details about that one, go look at my other video of that. Now, at first glance, these might all look pretty similar. They're all made from stainless steel. They all attach to your keychain. They're all designed to keep medication dry and protected. But after spending some time with them, I found each of them serve a different purpose. Some are designed to disappear in your pocket, like this one. Some maximize storage, like this one. It has 2 separate compartments, which is fantastic if you need to keep the medication separated. Another focuses on being as small as possible. So today we're going to compare every one of them. We'll look at the build quality, the machining, the waterproof seal, ease of opening, pocket carry, capacity, and then who each model is best suited for. And by the end of this video, I'll tell you exactly which one I would personally choose and why. So let's get started. So about the company. Before we get into the individual products, I'd like to spend just a minute talking about the company behind them. One thing I always appreciate is learning the story behind a product. Sometimes a company creates something simply because they see a market opportunity. Other times the product exists because someone had a real problem that needed solving. That's exactly what happened with Cielo. The company was founded by Chris Berner after she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder that made carrying medication an everyday necessity. After losing a keychain pill holder that had become part of her daily routine, she realized there was really not a product on the market that combined durability, reliability, and attractive design. So instead of settling for what was available, she decided to build one herself. The result is what you're looking at today. These pill holders are precision machined from stainless steel in Minnesota. So they're USA built. They're designed to be waterproof using an O-ring seal. And something else I really like is that 5% of every sale goes towards autoimmune disease research. I always appreciate when companies give back to a cause that closely connects to why the company actually exists in the first place. So why carry a Keychain pill holder? So for a lot of people, the answer is pretty obvious. If you take prescription medication and you need, that unexpectedly, having it with you can make all the difference. But honestly, I think these are useful for a lot more than just prescriptions. You might carry aspirin, Benadryl, ibuprofen, Tylenol, like these, different heart medications like nitroglycerin, even glucose tablets if you're diabetic, or maybe you don't carry medication at all. These also work really well for emergency cash, fishing hooks, small fire starters, water purification tablets, earplugs, tiny screws, or even a micro SD card if you wanted a waterproof place to store important data. That's one of the things I enjoy about products like these. They're incredibly versatile. The only real limit is the size of the container and then your imagination. So my first impressions of these, really when I first opened the package, the one I previously had and all these new ones, I was honestly impressed by the machining. Sometimes products like these feel inexpensive. You can see rough edges, the threads feel gritty, or they just don't inspire confidence. That wasn't my first impression here. Each one feels solid. The stainless steel gives them a reassuring amount of weight without being heavy. The finishes all look clean. The threading starts easily and the gaps tighten down smoothly. Those are little details, yes, but they're the kind of details that separate a quality product from something that feels disposable. These all have a waterproof design. As I mentioned, one of the most important parts of a pill holder isn't actually the metal. It's this tiny little rubber O-ring. Without it, this is simply a metal tube. With it, it becomes a waterproof container. That O-ring creates the seal that helps keep rain out, humidity, sweat, and accidental splashes. That's incredibly important because moisture is one of the biggest enemies of medication, as you probably know. If you're trusting one of these to carry something important, you want confidence that it will stay dry. One thing I recommend with any waterproof container is checking the O-ring every few months or at least once a year. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's not cracked, and if it starts to dry out over time, a very small amount of food-grade silicone grease will help keep it in excellent condition. As far as the build quality, I want to mention the machining because I think it's one of the strongest points of these products. The threads are smooth, they don't bind, they don't feel rough. The cap seats nicely against that O-ring we mentioned without feeling like you're forcing it. If you've ever owned a cheaply made aluminum pill holder, you've probably experienced threads that cross-thread easily or become difficult to start after a few months. That doesn't seem to be the case here, and nor has it been the case with my previous one. Everything feels precise. Everything lines up the way you'd expect from a well-machined stainless steel product. Considering these are designed to be carried every single day, that's really something I appreciate. We have the extra small nitro pill holder, the faceted gold pill holder, the petite slim single chamber, and finally the wide dual chamber pill holder. And then the previous one I already discussed. Each one serves a slightly different purpose, but some are built for maximum portability, some give you additional storage, and one allows you to separate different medications into two completely independent compartments. Over the next several minutes, we're going to go through each one individually. We'll talk about what I like, what I don't like, who I think it's best for, and whether I'd actually carry it every day. So let's start with the extra small nitro pill holder. The very first thing you'll notice is exactly what the name suggests. It's tiny. Pictures online really do not do it justice. When you actually hold it in your hand, you realize just how compact it really is. And honestly, I think that's its biggest strength. There's plenty of pill holders on the market that technically hold medication, but they're bulky enough that people eventually just stop carrying them. This one is different. Once it's attached to your keys, you really would forget it's there. It does not feel heavy, It doesn't make your keychain awkward. It doesn't poke your leg when you put it in your pocket and you sit down, like some things do, especially your keys. And if you're someone like me who keeps your keys in your front pocket every day, that's actually a bigger deal than you might think. Even though this is the smallest model that they offer, it definitely doesn't feel cheaply made. The stainless steel construction gives it a nice solid feel. The threads start smoothly. There's no roughness, no sharp edges, and the cap seats firmly against the rubber O-ring. That's something I really appreciate because inexpensive pill holders often feel gritty when you're opening and closing them, or they just cross thread easily. You know, eventually those threads start wearing. Sometimes they'll cross thread, like I said. This one definitely feels more refined. It isn't designed to replace your prescription bottle, and instead think of it as an emergency backup. Personally, I like that philosophy. Instead of carrying 20 pills around with you, you're carrying exactly what you hope you never need, but you'll be glad if that situation never comes up. If you're looking for the absolute smallest option, this is it. You know, ultimately it's perfect for someone who values comfort over capacity. You're giving up storage space, but you're gaining something that's incredibly easy to carry every single day. And sometimes that's the better trade-off. Now, let's move to what I think is probably the most unique looking pill holder in today's comparison. This is the faceted gold model. The first thing that stands out is obviously the appearance. Instead of being perfectly round like most pill holders, this one has multiple flat surfaces that almost resemble, like, I guess, a cut gemstone. It's actually a really cool design. I'm gonna kind of give you all sides here. There we go. So it definitely has a premium appearance. If someone saw this hanging from your keychain, I don't think most people would even realize it's a pill holder. It looks more like maybe a premium keychain accessory. I think that's intentional. Not everyone wants to advertise that they're carrying medication. This looks more like a piece of everyday gear than medical equipment. It definitely gives it a better grip. So, you know, I don't think those flat sides are just for appearance. It does actually improve the grip. If your hands are wet, if you're wearing gloves, if it's wet outside or cold outside, you know, those really little flat surfaces just make opening the cap noticeably easier than a perfectly smooth cylinder. It's one of those little design details that seems small until you actually use it. The gold finish also gives a premium look. Now, over time, any finish that's riding around with your keys is probably going to develop some scratches. That's simply part of everyday use. Personally, I don't really see that as a negative. Most of my everyday carry gear develops character over time. Knives, flashlights, pocket clips, you know, keys. I think a little honest wear actually tells the story of equipment that's actually being used. There we go. You know, you can also put it on a necklace if you wanted to do that, to carry it. It doesn't have to just go on your keychain. So this one gives you a little more internal space than the Nitro holder. That means you can carry several pills instead of just one emergency dose. Depending on what medication you're carrying, that extra room might make all the difference. I'm curious here. Yeah, so without the key ring, this one would fit right inside of this one. So let's do a little check. Tylenol. 2, 3, 4 Tylenol. So those are pretty snug, not much wiggle room. Let's do ibuprofen. I have 6 in there, and I can't tell if you can see that, but there's actually room for 1 more, so it would hold 7. You know, so really, I think, who's this one for? If you're someone who appreciates good design, if the appearance of it matters, or if you simply want something that looks a little more premium hanging from your keychain, I think this is a good option. It's functional, it's attractive, and it's still compact enough for everyday carry. So, you know, comparing these two, like I said, this one will fit inside of this one, but you know, they're really aimed at different people. Nitro Holder is all about being incredibly small and just carrying a few nitro tablets. You know, maximum portability, minimum weight. This Faceted Gold Holder adds a little more capacity and a more refined appearance. You know, neither one is better, they're just solving different problems. You know, if I only needed one emergency dose of medication and it fit in here, I would probably lean towards that simply because of how compact it is. But if I wanted something that looked a little more upscale and carried a few more pills, the faceted model would definitely be a good choice. Next, we're going to look at what I think will probably be the most popular models for everyday users: the petite, slim, single chamber and the wide dual chamber. These are the ones that really start balancing portability with increased storage, and I think they're going to appeal to a much wider audience. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be the most popular for everyday use. I don't know what their sales numbers are, but I think it's probably has to be one they're more popular. After handling all four of these, not the one I have on my keychain, this one really does feel like it kind of meets that sweet spot. It's noticeably larger than the Nitro model, but it's still compact enough that I don't think most people would hesitate to carry it every day on their keychain. Sometimes the smallest product isn't necessarily the best choice. Sometimes just a little bit more capacity makes a huge difference without making something feel incredibly bulky. And I think that's where this pill holder fits. You know, when you compare this next to the Nitro Holder, you immediately notice the size difference. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but inside it gives you considerably more usable storage. Instead of carrying one emergency dose or a couple nitro tablets because they're so small, you may be able to carry multiple doses depending on the size of your medication. You know, for people who travel, work long shifts, spend all day away from home, or simply having, you know, a backup supply available, that extra room becomes really valuable. So let's take a look here. So these, as far as Tylenol, because they're kind of a long medication, you can fit one in there. The lid has kind of a little recessed area in it, and that's where that will fit. You know, if you put them, let me see if you can see that. If you put them side to side like that, they won't fit because the threads, it'll hit this portion here. So Tylenol is too long for this, unless you want to just carry one. Ibuprofen, on the other hand, 1, 2, 3. I think you might be able to get 4 because of that recessed area in the lid. You have to jiggle it a little bit. Yes. Squeeze that down. Yep, so 4 fits perfectly in there. The thing I like about this one the most is it's incredibly easy to carry. You know, it's not oversized. It doesn't dominate your keychain. It doesn't become something you notice every time you sit down. To me, this feels like a balance point, small enough to forget about it, large enough to be genuinely useful. And honestly, that's exactly what I look for in everyday carry gear. Whether it's a flashlight, a pocket knife, a multi-tool, or even pill holder, the best piece of gear is usually the one that's just useful enough without becoming inconvenient. And just as I mentioned on the previous 2 models, the machining on this is excellent. You'll hear me say that time and time again. I know I'm repeating myself, but it really is. You know, those aluminum pill holders you get, the threads cross, they look rough, they just don't work well, they loosen up over time, and this does not do that. These work fantastic. The cap threads on smoothly, everything lines up perfectly, the stainless steel finish feels durable. Like I said, this one's been in my pocket for, I'll have to look back, 3 years at least, probably more. And looks great. It has super fine scratches on it. You can tell from rolling around onto my keys, but that's it. You know, it's got an aged appearance, which I actually like. You know, the O-ring provides that waterproof seal that helps protect whatever you're carrying inside. And one thing I've noticed across all 4 of these models is that consistency. You know, sometimes companies make one really nice product and then cut corners on the rest of the lineup, and that really does not seem to be the case here. So carrying this one, as mentioned, I would probably carry ibuprofen. I use that more than I do Tylenol. You know, if you need other medications, you'd have to compare the sizes of these, obviously, and get which one fits the medications you use daily, or that emergency backup medication that you hope to never use, but should have it in case you need it. You know, if I'm heading out for a day trip, fishing, camping, traveling, spending the day running errands, and have those medications available without carrying multiple bottles, like a big bottle of ibuprofen, that's super convenient. Even if you don't need medication every day, it's nice knowing it's there. So, you know, if someone asked me to recommend just one Cielo Pill Holder without knowing anything about them, this would probably be the first one I'd suggest. It's practical, it's compact, it carries enough medication for most situations, and I think it strikes a really good balance between portability and storage. You know, as far as, let's move on to the dual chamber. This is the biggest one, and I think it's definitely the most versatile in today's lineup. You know, for a couple reasons. This is the wide dual chamber, as I said. Instead of having one storage compartment, you actually have 2 completely separate waterproof compartments built into the same pill holder. These are a little bit squeaky when you first get them because it's rubbing on that seal until it gets kind of molded a little bit, but that's a great thing. Mine did it too. So separating both parts, we can see both parts have that seal. And it's just amazing, the machining quality on these. Every one. There's not, you know, a blemish, a problem, a random, you know, machining, big gouge, anything like that on any of these. Let's give you a close up here. And these key rings are super durable quality. They're thick. They're not those cheap, flimsy ones that you know are gonna break after a few months. So, anywho, why do these 2 compartments matter? You know, at first that might not sound like a big deal, but once you start thinking about how people actually use these products, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe you carry aspirin on one side, Benadryl on the other. Maybe you carry prescription medication in one compartment, emergency medication in the other. Maybe one side is for yourself and one side is for your spouse or another family member. You know, there's a lot of different ways you could organize it. And let's do this. You know, I think that's a really nice thing is that the medications stay completely separated. You're not digging through one compartment trying to find the right pill. Everything has its place. Organization is one of those things that doesn't seem important until you're trying to find something quickly. If you're carrying multiple medications, this design definitely has an advantage. Let's see. All right. So on the top compartment, this one carries 4 Tylenol. Let's separate these 2. Really no movement. So those fit in there snug. And I actually broke one right there. I was trying to fit an extra one in there. You know, it happens. So, could I jostle it and get 4 in there? Probably. So really 3 Tylenol, I think, is the takeaway from that on the top of this one. Let's see, ibuprofen. 6. So I brought 6 down here with me. I think 7, probably 8 could fit in there easily. Let's compare that with the bottom chamber on this. So where that ends, right there, if you put side by side, minus the threads is the same. So it should hold the same amount. The threads line up in the same area. So we will say those will hold the same amount in both upper and lower chamber. And Chris, the owner of this company, has been super nice. She sent me these. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm reviewing them because, you know, I use one every day. I really like their products. I think it's a great thing. And she seemed super nice. She was nice enough to send me these to review for you guys. You know, so I think it's a great thing that she's doing. So, oh, by the way, I do have a discount code for you. It's HAMMER10 for 10% off. Use that code and you'll get 10% off. So, you know, as far as capacity, this gives you the largest storage capacity in today's lineup. If you're someone who, you know, consistently carries several different medications, or you simply want more flexibility, this is going to be difficult to beat. Yes, it takes up slightly more room on your keychain, but that's the trade-off. More storage always means a slightly larger product. You know, for everyday carry, I was actually surprised that even though this is the biggest one here, it still doesn't feel oversized. Obviously, you'll notice it's a little bit more than the Nitro holder, but it's nowhere near bulky enough that I would avoid carrying it. For me, it still falls comfortably into that everyday carry category. So, you know, who should buy this one? Like I said, I think it's a model that's ideal for anyone who carries multiple medications. It's a great choice for travelers. Instead of carrying 2 separate pill holders, everything stays together in one compact package. That makes it easier to organize, easier to remember, and probably easier to live with day after day. So comparing these two, you know, the Petite Slim is all about simplicity. One compartment, clean design, excellent balance between size and capacity. The wide dual chamber takes that same level of quality and adds organization. I would probably lean towards the Petite Slim or this one. If you normally carry 2 or more medications, the dual chamber starts making a lot more sense. So we've spent some time looking at each model individually. The question becomes, which one is actually the best? Well, the answer really depends on how you plan to use it. You know, there's strengths and weaknesses of each. And, you know, which one would you spend your money on? I don't know. I can't make that decision for you, but I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. Now that we've looked at each of these individually, side by side, this is where the differences become much easier to see. Although all of these serve the same basic purpose, they're really designed for different types of users. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest strengths of Celia's lineup. Instead of making one pill holder and hoping it works for everyone, they've built several options that let you choose the one that best matches your everyday life. You know, so which one carries the best? It depends. You know, this one, are you going to put it on a necklace and wear it around your neck? These two, you're not. This one you could, for sure. This one you definitely could. This one will disappear the easiest. You know, it's easiest to forget about it. Once it's clipped to your keys, you wouldn't notice it's there even. You know, if you're someone who hates bulky products, this is probably going to be your favorite. Coming in second for me, you know, would be the Petite Slim. It gives you more storage without adding much extra bulk. Honestly, if I didn't have the Nitro sitting next to it for comparison, I'd probably describe the Petite Slim as very compact too. The faceted gold model falls right alongside it. The overall size is still very manageable, but the, you know, definitely unique shape makes it stand out a little bit more visually. And then the dual wide chamber is obviously the biggest one of them. You know, the one I have, the wide single, is just about the same height. It might actually be the same. I think it is the same. This is just split into 2 sections. This is 1. So because you don't have that divider there, which is taking up a little bit of space, you can carry a little bit more in this one. If you want to know more about this one, go look at my other video, but just so you can see, that's 6 ibuprofen. And that's 6 Tylenol. This is the single wide chamber one. Oh, it goes on so smooth now. So there's still room for more. All right. Sometimes it squeaks even after years of use. So, you know, we're still talking about a very small accessory. You know, even this one isn't what I'd call bulky. You notice it a little bit more than others, both of these, but not enough that it becomes annoying. You know, I've just gotten used to having this on my keychain, and oftentimes I forget it's there. The faceted gold model probably offers the best grip because of those flat surfaces, for sure. And then the design of the lid gives you that torque you need to open it. Especially if you have like arthritis and difficulty opening things, I think this would probably be your easier one to open. But these, because they're wide, definitely aren't that hard either. I actually use the key ring as leverage to twist it, sometimes. You know, as I mentioned, the threads across all of them feel really smooth, well machined. There wasn't one that felt rough or difficult to start. They all thread easily. That's, again, something I really appreciate, because this is a product you'll potentially open hundreds or even thousands of times. You know, that build quality is just, it's in a league of its own. So I always come back to that build quality. If someone handed me these without telling me the price, I would honestly assume they cost way more than any generic keychain pill holders you can find online. And the thing about these is the stainless steel feels substantial, the machining is clean, the caps fit precisely, the O-rings seat properly. Everything feels like it was built with long-term durability in mind, and that's because it was. Sometimes small products get overlooked when it comes to quality. I don't feel these are overlooked at all. You know, for that everyday use, I always ask myself one question when I'm reviewing everyday carry gear: would I actually carry this? If the answer is no, it doesn't really matter how nice the product is. Fortunately, I can honestly say yes, because I've kept this one on my keychain for years. You know, every one of these is compact enough that I wouldn't hesitate to keep it on my keychain. The one question becomes, how much storage do I actually need? That's really the deciding factor. As far as a review, I don't think it would be complete if you didn't mention what needs to be improved. To be honest, there isn't much I would change here. The one thing that might be nice in the future would be add additional finish options, like they did with this one. You know, black, titanium colored, maybe even bead blasted stainless steel. But after having this in my pocket for years, it's kind of a bead blasted stainless steel. I don't know if you can pick that up or not, but it looks fantastic. There we go. Another interesting option might be laser engraving from the factory. Something as simple as initials or a medical identifier could even add more personalization. Now, those are definitely not complaints. Those are just ideas that have crossed my mind while using them. If you're still trying to decide which one fits your needs, here's how I'd break it down. If you want the absolute smallest and lightest option, go with the extra small nitro. If you want something that's functional but also has a little more personality and style, The faceted gold model is an excellent choice. If you want what I think is probably the best all-around everyday carry option, the Petite Slim is incredibly hard to beat. And if you normally carry 2 different medications or simply appreciate staying organized, the wide dual chamber is easily the winner of these 4. The single wide is my overall pick. Obviously, because that's the one I carry, that's the one that works best for me. You know, who I think these are not for, I think is worth mentioning, as with any review. If you're trying to carry an entire week's worth of medication, these probably aren't the right solution. That's not what they're intended to do. These are designed for convenience, for emergency access, for carrying a small amount of medication securely wherever life takes you. And in that role, I think they do an excellent job. So after spending time handling this one and then all 4 of the new ones, I honestly don't think there's a bad choice here. Each one feels well made, each one serves its intended purpose, and each one fills a slightly different niche. At this point, it really comes down to your personal needs more than anything else. Now, let's do a little bit of a wrap up here with a size comparison using calipers. Left to right. So this one is 2.23 inches long by 0.57 inches diameter. If you include this, it's 1.04. The wide dual chamber. Oops, there we go. 2.18 long, 0.86 diameter. Wide single chamber, 2.16. And 0.85. Petite Slim is 1.31 by 0.6. The extra small nitro is 1.41 by 0.29. As far as long-term durability, these are made from stainless steel. That means they're designed to handle everyday life. They're going to get bumped around with your keys, dropped onto concrete, which mine has for sure, thrown onto countertops, stuffed into pockets. That's just part of owning any keychain accessory. But based on everything I've seen and my experience with this one is they should hold up fantastic over time. I will expect this will last my lifetime. The only part I would expect to eventually need attention is the small rubber O-ring, which are super cheap. You can get them from hardware stores, you can get them online, anywhere like that. Like I said, this one's been, I think, 3 to 5 years I've had it, and I've never had to replace it. The ring looks fine, so I would expect a long time between replacements. As long as you occasionally inspect it, keep it clean, and replace it if it ever becomes damaged, I don't see any reason that these wouldn't last a lifetime. Let's talk about value for a minute. Whenever I review a product, I always ask myself one question: would I spend my own money on it? And in this case, yes, I would. Could you find less expensive pill holders online? Absolutely. Cheap aluminum ones, cheap plastic ones. There's dozens of inexpensive options available. But in my experience, you often get what you pay for. Poor machining, cheap materials, rough threads, questionable waterproofing. Those are exactly the kinds of things you don't want when you're trusting a product to protect medication that may be important in an emergency. For me, I'd rather buy one quality product once than replace a cheaper one multiple times. So, who do I think these are perfect for? I think these make a lot of sense for several different groups of people. Anyone who carries emergency medication, people who travel frequently, outdoor enthusiasts, hikers, campers, hunters, fishermen, first responders, medical professionals. What else? Honestly, anyone who simply likes being prepared. They're small, they're practical, and they're one of those products that you probably won't think about very often until the day you're really glad you have one. So final recommendation after spending time with all of these, if you want the smallest, buy the Nitro. If you want the nicest appearance, buy the Facet Gold. If you want the best all-around everyday carry model, petite slim or wide single. If you carry multiple medications, buy the dual chamber. And just some closing thoughts, I want to give Cielo some credit for the story behind these products. This wasn't a company that set out to make another random keychain accessory. It started with a real need. Someone living with a chronic medical condition wanted a better solution. That personal experience is what led to these products, and I think that's worth recognizing. It's also nice knowing that a portion of every purchase helps support autoimmune disease research. That's something I always appreciate seeing from a company. So that's my look at the Cielo Keychain Pill Holder lineup. As I mentioned before, Chris was nice enough to give us a discount code. It's HAMMER10 for 10% off when ordering that. Definitely use that code. So I hope this comparison helped you decide which model might be right for you. If you already own one of these, I'd love to hear your experience down in the comments below. Let me know which model you carry. Also, if there's another everyday carry item you would like me to review next, let me know. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And as always, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys. Have a good day.